number of years. We've been in existence for 21 years now. We've had clean audits all the way through. And in 2019, we were informed that the auditor that we had was being removed from consideration as an auditor for charter schools. And so we ended up with a new auditing team that were very, very thorough and came in and looked not only at our current year, but at previous years. So we were surprised actually to see some of these things, and we have since corrected every one of the items. So at this point, I'd like to ask Nicole Burkhart, who's part of our administrative team at the school, to describe our responses to every one of the items that was raised in the audit. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Nicole Burkhart. I'm at the Star School, working as part of the leadership team here at the school. As Dr. Sorensen said, we're very proud of what we've been able to do with our students during the pandemic. We started out during the emergency closure with paper packets and food deliveries, and have managed, because of insight from Dr. Sorensen and other leaders who started preparing immediately for a more longer term situation, have been able to secure internet access for all of our students' devices, along with solar power to be able to maintain those devices during school. And we're able to have 96% average daily attendance, which is pretty phenomenal, particularly for how rural all of our students are. And so we're very, very proud of what we've been able to do in the pandemic times, where everything is quite different and incredibly challenging for our families. Looking at the specific issues that have come up, looking at our operational performance, there are a number of items, instructional days in our mission statement, where what we had in our records didn't match what was on record with the charter board. And so those items have now been through the amendment request process and have been approved. And now we've been through some training to know how that process works and how to verify that information on our own in advance on an ongoing basis, so that we can be on top of it as we go through each year. A number of items came up because of the auditing situation, or came up through the auditing situation that Dr. Sorensen described. One of the items with the audit opinion and the disclaimer had to do with a lack of a fixed asset listing and depreciation schedule. That was in part our previous auditors kept that information, and we weren't able to obtain it from them. And now that's been corrected. We have it on file, and our business specialist has that going on an ongoing basis as it should be. And so those practices are in place, and the corrective actions been submitted as was required. The difference in attendance reporting, through the auditing process, we discovered a problem with our student information system and the way it was reporting to the state. It was sending reports on a regular basis, but the reports weren't containing the right information. So we've been working with our student information system to make sure that we have all of the setup in place. We've also done training with that and have learned that there's an annual training in July to ensure that everything is set at the start of the school year. So we will participate in that on a yearly basis to make sure that the problem doesn't come up again. With fingerprinting, the issue with fingerprinting was with some expired fingerprints with board members, and the understanding at the time was a misunderstanding about the requirement for those members of our school community and the fingerprint requirements. So all employees and all board members are now part of our regular review of fingerprint clearance and their expiration, and making sure that they are up to date. Let's see. One of the other pieces was transparency in operations and board alignment. It was discovered that what was on file with the ACC didn't align with what was on file with the charter board. And there were a number of difficulties with the process for changing that. And so we've had some training in how to make that happen and how to monitor that on an ongoing basis so that we can make sure everything is in alignment as it should be going forward. Finally, the last piece was a late submission of the annual financial report, and that came about because we're reassigned and
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. One sec. Good morning, everybody. Just getting a little water. Let's see. Let's get everybody in. Hey, Diane.
Good morning.
Everything good there?
Everything's great. That Mark Kaplan. Oh my God.
Yeah, by the way, everyone should know he did not have anything to drink, by the way. I mean, maybe he sniffed something. He does not, wasn't really, I was kind of shocked. I thought maybe the pandemic had gotten to him, but he did not, he really did not drink. So he was that was him acting.
Oh, okay.
But no, really. Unfortunately, yesterday he found out one of his colleagues at work passed away from COVID, and very young guy in his 50s. So I guess he had some underlying, nothing major. I mean, he got sick about 2 weeks ago, and he was in his 50s. So he was pretty devastated. He was pretty upset yesterday, as you can imagine. But just another, this is the closest person he's known who's died of it. So
Oh my goodness.
becomes real, in a different way when people know somebody.
Yeah.
Anyways, but the good news, of course, is that people got their first vaccines yesterday, so that was good in LA. So that was hopeful.
Yeah.
That was hopeful to see.
Yeah, maybe by the holidays in September, we'll be able to meet again.
Holidays in September. Yeah. It's kind of weird. I mean, I guess. What's weird is that, it's just weird to think that the vaccine is out there and it's just going to take so much time to get it, So it is frustrating to know that it's there. I'm just glad I'm not in charge of deciding who gets to have one.
Yeah, you're still young.
I'm getting it last. I'm in the exact worst category to get this vaccination. I'm trying to see if I can get counted as a teacher.
We're hoping to get it like in February sometime.
Who knows? Who
us
knows?
people with underlying conditions and old people like Mary.
That's terrible. Terrible thing to say.
He loves to remind me that I'm a lot older than he is.
Well, he's lucky.
Judith, I loved your reading of the Latka book, but
We could get 10 tacos
but it-
at.
I was sad
whatchamacallit.
that he got eaten at the end.
Yeah, so was my teenager.
Los
Or she's not a
Originales?
teenager. So was one of my daughters.
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, we like the carne asada.
Yeah.
Carne asada.
Do we have any beans or salad or something?
Anyways, Judith did a great job reading that story. She really.
She did. It was fun.
Across the table from me was my 21-year-old making faces. It was really funny.
Thank you.
We had a good time with it.
I'd forgotten that I was unmuted.
Yeah, it's okay. For we heard about carne asada, but nothing. You didn't give away any secrets. You just made me hungry.
He's talking about carne asada.
You just made me hungry.
I am now.
Wow. Well,
They heard you, obviously.
it's all right. Didn't give away any. It's there. We're probably, Judith, you're gonna not only be reading Latka, you're gonna be reading today, because I think Rosemary's gonna be on and off today. She has unfortunately some she's gonna have some time with a hospital today. So I was just reading that email.
How embarrassing.
No, you're not embarrassed. Now you're unmuted again. So now we hear you, but you're not. You didn't say anything. You didn't say anything bad. Don't worry.
Is there any screaming?
There's no screaming today.
It's my professional.
But anyway, so Rosemary has
appointments.
Rosemary might come on, but she has to be in the hospital with an appointment with Dave. Anyways, yeah, well, hopefully we'll see her. And it's interesting too, because unfortunately her machatonim, as we say in Judaism, her machatonim, her son's in-laws are sick. So her son's father-in-law, her machatonim, and we don't have a English word for it, the in-laws.
And it's
Anyways.
it's the best word because there is a relationship, and in English we don't have that word.
There are certain words that we have in Hebrew that usually, by the way, have to do with family, not coincidental, that we don't have words for in English. And machatanim is one of them. I mean, we say it in Yiddish.
But isn't that the same exact opposite? Also, there's some words in English for family that is not in Hebrew. Didn't
Well,
you
it's
say
funny.
cousin? There's no cousin.
It's funny because we create this word ben dod, which means the son of my uncle. But what's weird about that though, Mike, is that the reason that they probably didn't have it is because they just considered that family. But yeah, they didn't.
Well, some of my cousins I don't consider family. So
Well, but
Mhm.
that is an interesting point. And I think it's it's kind of indicative of Hebrew, and like they say how many words there are for
Snow.
snow and as Eskimo. Anyways, I'm getting off of a point. The point of what I was saying is that the machatanim of Rosemary, her machatanim, the guy's name is David Duke. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
make sure you say pray for the healing of David Duke. And I knew that was, I met him at the wedding. I officiated at Ben's wedding. So I knew the guy's name. Her daughter-in-law's name is Megan Duke. And she goes, "This is my father, David." And I go, "David Duke?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's David Duke." So I just texted Rosemary. It's the first time I've ever said you should know David Duke before. It's not that David Duke. It's not the
Different David.
whatever. But it's such a weird name that, you know, it just kind of sticks out, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I was
You
thinking
look so
about that.
dazed when you come in the morning. You don't look like,
So who's gonna be on the
Wait,
we
this is
don't-
good.
we're
We
missing-
should listen.
we're missing a lot of people. By the way, I wanted to tell you one other thing that we're just thinking about the Hebrew words for things for family members. One of the words that I thought was always interesting was you know, we have a word in English for somebody who loses their parent, right? You become an orphan, right? Hebrew has a word for someone who loses a child. We don't have that in English, and we should. There's actually an episode of 6 Feet Under that I'll never forget where somebody loses a child, and they say something like, there should be a name for that. And somebody says, well, it's so awful, there's no name for it. But there actually should be, because it's such a horrible thing. And Hebrew actually provides a word for it, shakol, which is you know, another indication of, you know, again, kind of thinking about family.
Spell that one, Mark.
Shakol, like shin,
Kuf.
kuf. I mean kaf, vav,
Kaf.
lamed.
Bob Lamet.
Anyways, I think about that sometimes as a word for in Hebrew that we don't have in English. Well, we're going to start. We have a smaller group today, but it's okay. We're going to have a good time.
That's because we're 10 days away from Christmas.
What, I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
But we did have a really good time every night of Hanukkah so far. We've had a good time doing stuff. Had a good cooking class last night. Judith was on there for most of it, I think, almost all of it. You were there. And some of you other people who had a chance to see our air fryer in action. We got to use the air fryer. But it was fun. And we hope you're staying safe. I'm just keep getting alerts from people who are telling me how bad the hospital situation is right now. Please don't go to the hospital. Please stay safe.
Are you going on Facebook, Rabbi?
Yeah, I'm putting it on right now. Thank you for reminding me. We're that's exactly what I was doing as I looked away.
Team effort here.
I was doing it exactly. I think he sensed that I was looking away because I was doing the stream. But yeah, please stay safe. And I just got an email from Francine that her.
And Rabbi, why are you wearing a sweatshirt?
I don't, you know, I'm cold.
You don't wear sweatshirts.
I know. I was cold when I woke up. I put on my shirt and I'm like, oof, it's chilly. But it's really
that is a sign of getting old, Rabbi.
No, it's not really that cold, of course. I know, but yes, I'm getting old. What's the weather like in Jeff? What's the weather like in Denver right now?
Yeah, well, we have no snow happening now, but we had snow yesterday. So we woke up to 3 inches of snow, and on Sunday we had 3 inches of snow. So there's some snow on the ground.
Nice.
And it's about 24 degrees.
24 degrees. That's a
What- I went cross country skiing once in Colorado in -4.
Yeah.
That was cold.
That's a refrigerator. Degrees, you can put food outside. If you can put food outside on the front porch, it's cold. And guess what? We're going to health this morning, so perfect segue.
Yeah.
We're going to hell with Moses today. We're actually going to heaven too. Well, actually last
We
week
went to heaven last week.
we were in heaven. Now we're going to hell, and then we kind of go back to heaven. But I will tell you, it's a little confusing because what we see, of course, in this is that what we see is that heaven, and this is going to be confusing, heaven and paradise are different things in the sense that what we saw last week was where the angels are, kind of the behind the veil, how the universe runs, and what's going on behind the curtain, pulling back the curtain, using the curtain.
Well,
now,
isn't really paradise Garden Eden?
yeah, and that's what we are going to look at today. We're going to look at Gan Eden. We're going to look at where the people go in the world to come. And again, it seems as though this world to come, folks, is not, the Messianic era when maybe these souls come back and everybody is in a Gan Eden type of thing. But that's why it says paradise and hell, because heaven, the way it was described before, was really more of a operational, how the universe gets run, and so there is a difference in, especially in the rabbinic teaching. So when people talk about visions of heaven in Kabbalistic texts, oftentimes they're not talking about heaven, which we would say would be the, and by the way, this is an example of Hebrew words, between, Shemaim and Gan Eden. The heavens might include how the gears turn up through the skies and make rain come, and how the planets and everything move. But that's different from paradise. And so we're going to see that today, and we're going to see again, Ginsburg doesn't footnote this great, but a lot of these texts come from a period in time when Judaism is developing ideas about heaven and hell that are, I'd say, probably more affected by Greco-Roman literature than anything else. And so you'll see a lot of that get in there, and a lot of Persian style stuff too. So just remember that most of what we're reading here really doesn't really have a basis in the Bible. That being said, please jump in if you see stuff that you want to comment about and say, where did that come from? All right.
Before we start, Mark, how often is paradise as Gan Eden in the Bible, in the Tanakh?
Not.
It's not at all.
Nope.
But heaven is as
Shemaim.
As Shemaim.
The problem is that Shemaim can sometimes be the sky, and sometimes it can be heaven, which again tells you a little bit about words, right? About what you have words for and what you don't have words for. Because heaven was not in the biblical period that elaborated on, not defined, not as many words. So the fact that there's only one word for the sky for heaven, and there's really no word for hell in the Bible, so at all.
But Sheol shows up.
Yeah, Sheol shows up as, and sometimes it's translated as hell, but it's definitely the netherworld, and it's not hell. It can't be hell. It's got to be the place where people go after they die, which doesn't seem like a good thing because the way it's described, but it is not hell. I want to make it real clear, because Jacob talks about going there. Samuel talks about going there. People that we assume are good people don't talk about it. They just don't want to go there, but it's not necessarily hell. It means more death than anything else. It's clearly a place of death, but
move my charger around somewhere too.
Okay, there you go.
No, the white one.
Jeez, how do I get back to that? All right. So Judith, we're going to turn it over to you to start us. So last week, again, Moses was in heaven, but in the celestial realm, I would say. That's probably a better word for it. The celestial realm, which is where the angels and where God's presence is. All right.
Moses visits paradise and hell. When Moses was on the point of departing from heaven, a celestial voice announced, Moses, you came here and you did see the throne of my glory. Now you shall also see paradise and hell. And God dispatched Gabriel on the errand of showing hell to him. Terrified by its fires when he caught sight of them as he entered the portals of hell, Moses refused to go farther. But the angel encouraged him, saying, there is a fire that not only burns, but also consumes, and that fire will protect you against hellfire. So you can step on it and you will not be seared.
So he's going live into hell. So he's actually going to, as you can see, kind of go into three realms. He's going into the celestial area of heaven, to hell, and then to paradise. But of course, he's scared about going into hell because hell is hot, and it's even hotter than Palm Springs. And you've got to get protected with sunscreen. But of course, it's not sunscreen. It is health. It is fire that
Regular fire.
hellfire. So there's fire that is the protecting fire. Seems to be maybe kind of like the fire that's in the burning bush. Right? This is
What you do with my
and
chargers.
interesting because again,
That was white
you have this
here.
description of different. Anyways, sorry.
Cheryl, if you can mute Cheryl, she doesn't know.
I know I don't see I don't have my mute bar anymore. Sorry, I'm looking for it. All right, so Moses and that's where we are.
As Moses entered hell, the fire withdrew a distance of 500 parsangs, and the angel of hell, Nasargiel, asked him, who are you? And he answered, I am Moses, the son of Amram. Nasargiel, this is not your place. You belong in paradise. Moses, I came here to see the manifestation of the power of God. Then said God to the angel of hell, go and show hell up to Moses and how the wicked are treated there. Immediately he went with Moses, walking before him like a pupil before his master. And thus they entered hell together. And Moses saw men undergoing torture by the angels of destruction. Some of the sinners were suspended by their eyelids, some by their ears, some by their hands, and some by their tongues. And they cried bitterly. And women were suspended by their hair and by their breasts, and in other ways, all on chains of fire. Nasargiel explained, these hang by their eyes because they looked lustfully upon the wives of their neighbors, and with a covetous eye upon the possessions of their fellow men. These hang by their ears because they listened to empty and vain speech, and turned their ear away from learning the Torah. These hang by their tongues because they talked slander and accustomed their tongue to foolish babbling. These hang by their feet because they walked with them in order to spy upon their fellow men. But they walked not to the synagogue to offer prayer unto their Creator. These hang by their hands because with them they robbed their neighbor of their possessions and committed murder. These women hang by their hair and their breasts because they uncovered them in the presence of young men, so that they conceived desire on them and fell into sin.
So you can see people are being punished by the parts of their body that they sin with. So this is kind of, I described it before as kind of the Hieronymus Bosch paintings, of people being punished in hell. We have a Jewish version of this. Nasargiel is this angel of hell, and you'll see from this that he's kind of doing God's job. He's there to punish people
Rabbi,
by the sins that they did. Yeah.
I was taught as a young child, and maybe because I was a young kid when they taught it, that Jews don't believe in hell.
Some don't, some do.
Hmm.
The point is that it's not mentioned in the Bible. So by the time we get to the Talmud, we have this idea that there must be a place where people are punished if they don't get punished in this world.
Okay, so maybe I was taught that there was no hell in the Bible. Maybe that's
Yeah, and it's you see the development of it. You can see, we don't know exactly. There's not like, oh, from this day forward, Jews started describing hell, but we have it in ancient texts. This text is, again, it's difficult to know exactly when, because Ginsburg didn't give great notes on this. And for example, Nasar Giel, I can't find the earliest reference to Nasar Giel as an angel. So that would help a little bit, but he is mentioned early on in texts. It's not. And again, it was very common for people by that time, that as Jews came in contact with people from other cultures, they were influenced by it. And I think one of the things that happened is we've talked about this before. When the Bible deals with punishment, the Bible's almost always talks about collective punishment. We break the commandments and we're exiled from our country. If we do something bad, we're punished as a group. Once Israel is essentially done, once there's no country anymore for us to be held accountable to, you get much more of these individual, this focus on the individual accountability. And when you have an individual accountability, then you can have heaven and hell. It's not that people in the ancient world before, when the temple was around, it's not like it wasn't like nobody believed in the afterlife. They seem to have believed in the afterlife, but the focus of it takes on a whole new level once the temple is destroyed and people no longer are saying, well, if we do bad, then we're going to be punished as a group. Well, now you've been punished as a group, whatever. Now what happens? And so people had to deal with that. So the biblical view of punishment was really, you get punished here in this world. And that's why people, when they read the Bible, they're kind of left with, yeah, there's no hell. But there has been in Jewish literature and Jewish teachings for 2,000 years as kind of like, this is what's out there for you if you don't do the right thing. And so that's why, you have this kind of difference. But there's not like a point where Jews started to believe in hell and they didn't before, but you definitely know it happens as the temple is destroyed, and it kind of leaves that open for people to kind of figure out, well, there's got to be punishment for people who don't do the right thing. So that's why, by the way, we have this idea, and you'll see it come out in the Midrash and in the Talmud all throughout. What that means, by the way, is that if you get punished in this world, you probably aren't getting punished in the world to come. So it also explains that Jewish suffering in this world actually helps us, because we are not going to get punished in the next world, and everybody else is going to get punished, except when it comes to certain things. When it comes to certain behaviors, especially adultery and like kind of one-to-one type of personal behaviors, you see those, but this idea that you get punished in this world, or we're getting punished in this world, means that in the world to come, most Jews go right to heaven because we're already suffering. So it was kind of also a way of explaining the suffering that Jews were dealing with at the time. All right. So is an interesting discussion between the angel and hell itself. Hell personified. Okay.
Moses heard hell cry with a loud and bitter cry, saying to Nasargiel, give me something to eat. I am hungry. Nasargiel, what shall I give you? Hell, give me the souls of the pious. Nasargiel, the Holy One, blessed be he, will not deliver the souls of the pious to you.
Wow. So you got, hell wants to be fed. Hell wants souls. and the Sargiel is doing the job. The Sargiel can only deliver those bad souls. The good souls, they're not coming down here. So I guess that's a little bit of a help. And then let's get some more descriptions. Here we go.
Moses saw the place called Aluka, where sinners were suspended by their feet, their heads downward, and their bodies covered with black worms, each 500 parsangs long. They lamented and cried, "Woe unto us for the punishment of hell. Give us death that we may die." Now Sargiel explained, "These are the sinners that swore falsely, profaned the Sabbath and the holy days, despised the sages, called their neighbors by unseemly nicknames, wronged the orphan and the widow, and bore false witness. Therefore has God delivered them to these worms."
Not fun. Not fun.
Moses went from there to another place, and there he saw sinners prone on their faces, with 2,000 scorpions lashing, stinging, and tormenting them, while the tortured victims cried bitterly. Each of the scorpions had 70,000 heads, each head 70,000 mouths, each mouth 70,000 stings, and each sting 70,000 pouches of poison and venom, which the sinners are forced to drink down, although the anguish is so racking that their eyes melt in their sockets. Nice. Nasargiel explained, "These are the sinners who caused the Israelites to lose their money, who exalted themselves above the community, who put their neighbors to shame in public, who delivered their fellow Israelites into the hands of the Gentiles, who denied the Torah of Moses, and who maintained that God is not the creator of the world."
Wow. So another hell for people who are doing those sins. That's another one.
Then Moses saw the place called Titbayawen, in which the sinners stand in mud up to their navels, while the angels of destruction lash them with fiery chains and break their teeth with fiery stones from morning until evening. And during the night, they make their teeth grow again to the length of a parsang, only to break them anew the next morning. Nasargiel explained, "These are the sinners who ate carrion and forbidden flesh, who lent their money at usury, who wrote the name of God on amulets for Gentiles, who used false weights, who stole money from their fellow Israelites, who ate on the Day of Atonement, who ate forbidden fat and animals and reptiles that are an abomination, and who drank blood."
Yeah. So that's a bad place, but it doesn't seem to be maybe not as bad as some of the other places. Look, what's more interesting, of course, than the punishments and the tortures going on in hell is why these people are being punished, right? What did they do to get them into hell? I mean, some of them are, as you can see, are doing things that we'd consider maybe not the major transgressions, but based on this, some of us are going to hell for Dodger dogs, but most of them seem like, laws that are breaking the Torah, especially this last one, which is mainly kashrut stuff, and how you eat kind of stuff. But there is that weird one there too, which wrote the name of God on amulets for Gentiles. Now you wonder, isn't writing the name of God on anything a bad thing? Yeah, probably. But it could be that while that was bad, it wasn't something that took you to hell just by writing God's name. But if you did it for magic purposes, and to do it here in particular, to do it to give to Gentiles, that was considered something you could be punished for. So it seems as though those two things together were a problem. What's of course interesting about this is that must have been happening for this to be a punishable offense, so to speak. that means people were doing it. That means people were buying amulets with God's name, and these people were not Jewish. These were people that were using it for magical purposes, and these are not Jews. So, again, not necessarily the worst thing someone could do, but it's definitely not good. And it was being done. I mean, the question is why would people, want that? But people did. So there was using God for magical purposes and encouraging that or enabling Gentiles to do that was considered a sin. So it's interesting. Again, that's, if you want to say, a lower level of hell. But let's look at the next place that Moses gets to see.
Then Nasargiel said to Moses, "Come and see how the sinners are burnt in hell." And Moses answered, "I could not go there." But Nasargiel replied, "Let the light of the Shekhinah precede me, and the fire of hell will have no power over you." Moses yielded, and he saw how the sinners were burnt, one half of their bodies being immersed in fire, and the other half in snow, while worms bred in their own flesh crawled over them. And the angels of destruction beat them incessantly. Nasargiel explained, "These are the sinners who committed incest, murder, and idolatry, who cursed their parents and their teachers, and who, like Nimrod and others, called themselves gods." In this place, which is called Abaddon, he saw the sinners taking snow by stealth and putting it in their armpits to relieve the pain inflicted by the scorching fire. And he was convinced that the saying was true: "The wicked mend not their ways, even at the gate of hell."
Yeah. So this is a cautionary tale. So Moses is going to learn from this, and hopefully the reason why God gives him this vision is so that he can tell people, don't wind up here, which again, as Mike pointed out, is interesting since Moses doesn't seem to talk about this in Torah. But of course, in the rabbinic mind by this period, it's there. You just have to know where to look. And that's saying the wicked men not their ways even at the gate of hell isn't in the Bible. It's not a biblical passage, but was obviously a popular saying at the time, which is that, people don't stop even as even as they know they're going to hell, they don't stop. So people are, they doom themselves. So it's a horrible experience. Moses is scared by it. He's hopefully going to take the lessons back to us and help us. Any questions about the dark place, the bad place? Because now we're going to go to the good place.
As Moses departed from hell, he prayed to God. You went too far.
Oh, yep.
As Moses departed from hell, he prayed to God. "May it be thy will, O Lord my God and God of my fathers, to save me and the people of Israel from the places I have seen in hell." But God answered him and said, "Moses, before me there is no respecting of persons and no taking of gifts. Whoever does good deeds enters paradise, and he that does evil must go to hell." At the command of God, Gabriel now led Moses to paradise. As he entered, two angels came toward him, and they said to him, "Your time is not yet arrived to leave the world." And Moses made answer, "What you say is true, but I have come to see the reward of the pious in paradise." Then the angels extolled Moses, saying, "Hail, Moses, servant of God. Hail, Moses, born of woman, that has been found worthy to ascend to the seven heavens. Hail to the nations to which you belong.
So Moses gets to see how the punishment is. And of course he says, oh, this is horrible. Don't let any Jews come here. And God says, it's not up to me. They've got to choose. So then he gets to go to heaven. But when he gets to heaven, or in this case again, where people die where people go and the good people go where they die, he gets there and the angels who are there guarding the gate say, you're not supposed to, Moses, you're here early, right? So they know when he's supposed to get there. The administering angels, the bouncers, if you will, of heaven, they say to Moses, you're here early. Your time hasn't come yet. And then clearly they didn't get the memo. He didn't get the memo that he's there on a fact-finding mission. He's there to learn what heaven looks like. Reverend Lynn, you just missed the description of hell in Judaism, which
Judah sent me a little thing. It sounded more like Dante to me, but
it did. Most Jews think hell is, not being able to find a good deli, which is unfortunate because therefore Santa Clarita is at least the gateway to hell. Anyways, no, it's not. We don't have lots of descriptions of hell, but we just read one, and yes, it does seem like we borrowed it from other people. Look, as we were saying, this is the place where people go to be punished, and there definitely are different regions, like there are in Dante's descriptions. And we're going to see different regions here in heaven where people get different access passes, if you will. And we've seen this before. We've seen descriptions of heaven. So this isn't the first time we've seen it. Years ago, we studied heaven and hell in Judaism, and we looked at some of these descriptions. So Moses gets to have a sneak peek. Moses gets to see it because he gets to tell people what they should be looking forward to and what they should be not looking forward to. The interesting thing here, though, folks, is these words that happen to Moses when he comes in. Hail Moses, servant of God. Hail Moses, born of a woman. I mean, that sounds kind of Christian a little bit. It seems like they borrowed this, or this, some kind of blending of things that people were saying about messianic figures at the time. Again, it's not in the Torah. It's not in the Bible. It's not, you won't find these descriptions anywhere in the Bible, but it's all based on, you have to work from what we have in the Bible, though. And so when this was written, which again was long after Moses was gone, you have these descriptions, and long after the other people in the Bible were mentioned too. But again, maybe after Christian Bible was already canonized. So here, or at least the backdrop of Christian text was written. So here's the Gan Eden. Here's again the place where the righteous dead go. Here we go.
Under the tree of life, Moses saw the angel Shamshiel, the prince of paradise, who led him through it and showed him all there is therein. He saw 70 thrones made of precious stones, standing on feet of fine gold, each throne surrounded by 70 angels. But one of them was larger than all the others, and it was encircled by 120 angels. This was the throne of Abraham. And when Abraham beheld Moses and heard who he was, and what his purpose was in visiting paradise, he exclaimed, "Praise ye the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever."
Yeah, and that's Kile Olam Chazdo. It's the words that we say in the Psalms, especially Psalm 136. So Abraham is there, of course, and Abraham sees Moses and learns who he is and what he's going to do, and is very happy. So you get the blessing of Abraham. That's that's good. And as you can see, that the angel who's in charge of this is Shamshiel. So the Sargiel is the prince of the other side. Shamshiel is the prince of paradise. Again, these are not angels that we hear a lot about. These are not you know, primary angels, if you will, but they do God's work. They maintain order in these realms. But it's interesting because, again, they clearly work for God. They do what God tells them, and they seem somewhat limited. First of all, the angels didn't seem to know that Moses was on his way to take a tour. They were like, oh, okay, we'll take you around. But they do what kind of God tells them to do. So let's look at what's in heaven, or Gan Eden. I'm going to say paradise.
Is Shamshiel from the same root as Shamash?
So yeah, this is the sun angel. Yeah.
Moses asked Shamshiel about the size of paradise, but not even he, who is the prince thereof, could answer the question, for there is none that can gauge it. It can neither be measured, nor fathomed, nor numbered. But Shamshiel explained to Moses about the thrones, and they were different one from the other, some being of silver, some of gold, some of precious stones and pearls and rubies and carbuncles. The thrones made of pearls are for the scholars that study the Torah day and night for her own sake. Those of precious stones are for the pious, those of rubies for the just, those of gold for the repentant sinners, and those of silver for righteous proselytes. The greatest of them all, continued Shamshiel, is the throne of Abraham. The next in size, the thrones of Isaac and Jacob. Then come the thrones of the prophets, the saints, and the righteous, each in accordance with a man's worth and his rank and the good deeds he has performed in his lifetime. Moses asked them for whom the throne of copper was intended, and the angel answered, for the sinner that has a pious son. Through the merits of his son, he receives it as his share.
Nice. Okay, so there's some people who don't really deserve even to have a throne in heaven, but they get some from their child. So somebody who's not a good person, but yet has a good child, that's enough. You don't get a great seat in the, but you get a seat. And in all fairness, like, what is this teaching us, right? That there is a place, there is a time when people who do right, the good things are, are there. It's interesting because when you look at, who is there, it says righteous proselytes, which I think is an interesting one because, assumedly they're not as valuable as the people who've fallen, right? It doesn't quite make sense. You got the pious, the just, repentant sinners, they still get something good. And then come the righteous proselytes, would mean like they don't get, they should be Jewish. They should get whatever a Jewish person gets. So I think one of the takeaways from this, folks, is that it's probably not actually should be righteous proselytes. It's probably actually originally meant, or the actual word was righteous Gentiles, people who were not proselytes, people who did not convert, but people who were just good people, who were not Jewish. So to call them proselytes, which implies a convert, is probably, again, it's not the right translation. It really should be, if you know what I'm saying, it really should be, people who've never become Jewish. And again, therefore, the people who are below them are people who are not good people, but who have a good kid. So I guess there's a little, I mean, the teaching there is that, you know, if you're worried about your parent, if you do a really good job, they may get a seat in heaven because of you. So there's a nice idea here, which is that sometimes and by the way, the converse isn't true, that a really bad job gives you a seat in hell. It doesn't say that. So it's kind of nice that you can get credit from the people who come after you. It's kind of a nice idea, and it kind of comforts somebody who has a parent who maybe was a little bit of a schnook. So it's a nice little teaching there about it. And again, it seems as though, folks, that this Gan Eden is in fact the Gan Eden. When it talks about the tree of life, it's that tree of life. Where they're at is the Garden of Eden. You're going to see this. This is kind of like, again, the idea that wherever Gan Eden was originally, the Garden of Eden, that's where the righteous go. That's where we go when we die, to that place.
Just a question. I not only did I miss the first part of the class, but I'm slow. My recollection is that the Torah does not have a lot to say about heaven or hell.
It doesn't. So this all has to be based on, it's all based on, you know, stuff that Jews picked up from other places, but it still had to be consistent with the Torah. So it couldn't go against the Torah. So it had to work in conjunction with the Torah. And so to grasp it at a straw, if you will, it's this idea that God, after Adam and Eve get thrown out of Eden, they wind up outside, right? And so when you go back inside, when does a person go back inside? When they die. So Gan Eden literally became like a place where we don't know where it is, because it's not really on our planet anymore. It's not in this dimension, if you will. The Gan Eden is now in a different dimension, but it's still there. And so Gan Eden never goes away. It actually has a function. And so it's very strange that became the place. It wasn't, Gan Eden became the place where souls go when they die, if they're good. And that is different, you weren't here for this part though. When we read it last week, that was the heavens where God and the angels are. That's a different place from Gan Eden. It's a different place from paradise. They're different places. So the heavens are places where the angels abide. Gan Eden, wherever that is the place where the dead are, the souls are, when they go. The good souls are. Yeah. And again, you know, what do we take away from it? You gotta take away these bits and pieces of what people were really thinking about and answering these questions. So some of them are, well, what happened to the Garden of Eden? No one can go back there, but why? And so then you get these beliefs, these legends about what happens to us when we go there. And so that's why we use that phrase all the time. We talk about, in Judaism, we talk about Gan Eden being paradise. You know, now we've kind of conflated it with heaven, where the angels are. I mean, there are angels here. Don't get me wrong. It says there's angels here, but like that angels and people are the same, or these kind of things. It's not really like that in this early period. And I don't think it really gets that way until Jews start really mixing with some of the Christology that exists about heaven. And I don't know. I mean, look, the purpose of Moses seeing this and teaching us is so that we have something to look forward to, obviously. But look, you'll see I mean, this is not, again, it's not in the Torah, but they're going to really have to hook it on the Torah. Here we go.
Again, Moses looked, and he beheld a spring of living water welling up from under the tree of life and dividing into 4 streams, which passed under the throne of glory and thence encompassed paradise from end to end. He also saw 4 rivers flowing under each of the thrones of the pious, one of honey, the second of milk, the third of wine, and the fourth of pure balsam.
And again, just like the Garden of Eden has 4 rivers coming out of it, this is now 4 rivers that, I mean, those rivers that are described in the Bible, the Euphrates is mentioned. I mean, the other ones, the Gihon and, the Pishon, these other rivers, we're not exactly sure where they are. I mean, we think that they're the Tigris, Euphrates, maybe the Nile and the Ganges, or the Nile and the, another river in the Middle East. I mean, we don't know, but exactly, but we think, I mean, they're places. These are not rivers like that. These are rivers of, so I wouldn't want to drink of them, but I guess you could if you wanted to. They're good things to drink. Well, not balsam, but it's very expensive.
Smells good. Beholding all these desirable and pleasant things, Moses felt great joy, and he said, "Oh, how great is your goodness, which you have laid up for them that fear you, which you have wrought for them that put their trust in you before the sons of men." And Moses left paradise and returned to the earth.
He's not
At the moment of his departure, a heavenly voice cried aloud, "Moses, servant of the Lord, you that are faithful in his house, even as you have seen the reward that is laid up for the pious in the world to come, so also you will be worthy of seeing the life of the world that shall be in the future time. You and all Israel, you will see the rebuilding of the temple and the advent of the Messiah. Behold the beauty of the Lord and meditate in his temple."
All right, so they just kind of tipped their hand of when this was written, which was after the destruction of the temple. So clearly this was written by somebody who kind of like didn't care so much of what happened already, but what was going to happen, which is the rebuilding of the temple and the advent of the Messiah. So Moses gets to see not just heaven and hell, the inner workings of God, but he gets to see the future. He gets to see throughout time. And he gets to see the time of the Messiah, which again is heaven on earth. And so he gets to see these things happening, which means as much as he sees the bad, he also knows that eventually it'll all be good. And that means that there's a time to come in the future when heaven and hell aren't even the focus anymore. It's not even the focus. It is something new, something different. And that is also not in the Torah. So how do we reconcile this? So here's what they have to say.
In the world to come, Moses, besides sharing the joys of Israel, will continue his activity as the teacher of Israel. For the people will go before Abraham and request him to instruct them in the Torah. He will send them to Isaac, saying, "Go to Isaac. He has studied more of the Torah than ever I studied." But Isaac, in turn, will send them to Jacob, saying, "Go to Jacob. He has had more converse with the sages than ever I had." And Jacob will send them to Moses, saying, "Go to Moses. He was instructed in the Torah by God himself."
Read the last line too.
In the messianic time, Moses will be one of the 7 shepherds that shall be the leaders of Israel with the Messiah.
All right. So that's Moses's visions at the burning bush. It's really interesting, again, how they bring in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. because they recognize that these are our patriarchs. These are the people that are kind of, they precede Moses, and they must have been knowledgeable in God's ways. Well, it seems to be that they knew the Torah. We've read that before, that somehow Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew what was in the Torah. The rabbis assume that, but they also assume that if they did know the Torah, they didn't know it as well as Moses did. Moses is the final authority on the text. Why? Because he learned it from God. He got it from God. So whatever they had, they got. Maybe God imparted it to them they downloaded it into their brains, whatever. But they didn't get it on Mount Sinai. They didn't dictate it. They didn't have that time with God that Moses seems to have. So they defer to Moses. What's also interesting, of course, is that they defer to each other, the next one to the next one to the next one, with the assumption being that each child, each Abraham's son and then grandson, knew more than he did, which kind of seems to go against this idea that Abraham is in heaven on a special throne all to himself. He gets like the highest level, he gets into the highest level of heaven. There's an interesting other teaching here, which is that every generation would have known a little bit more and understood a little bit more, which is a really interesting idea, of course, in Judaism, which seems to imply that, while Moses might know the most, every generation that studies normally, that's not Moses, knows more than the previous generation. That the wisdom accumulates, the knowledge accumulates, the information accumulates, which is a really interesting idea, and one that kind of makes us hopeful that we can know more. Not that, the people back then knew more than we did, that we actually know more. Obviously it's what we do with that information, but there is a really hopeful idea there, which is not that we're going backwards when it comes to knowledge. Moses stands out. Moses is different. Moses is going to be there when the Messiah comes, and he's going to help us again. Because Moses is undoubtedly the greatest teacher. He's Moshe Rabbeinu. He's Moses, our teacher. But normally, when one rabbi learns from another rabbi, it's not that they get stupid every generation. It's not that the wisdom degrades. No, because that guy can learn from another person, and another person, and another person, and the knowledge is accumulating. There's new teachings and there's new ways of looking at things, and the rabbis realize that. Something that, it's a different way of looking at history, a different way of looking at possibilities in the future that I think really, again, made Judaism unique, which is we're not looking backwards when it comes to knowledge. We're not saying we forgot. I mean, maybe we did, but that's on us. It's not that we should have forgotten. It's not that we have to forget. It's not like we're getting dumber. Well, we are, but we're not really. We're not, because the wisdom is out there, the knowledge is out there. If we want to take it on, if we want to learn it, then we have the access to it, and we really do. I mean, it really is. It's a really hopeful vision of the future, which I think I really think is important. It's one of the important takeaways from this whole discussion about the future and heaven and hell and the world to come, that not only is it going to be better, but that we can know more than the people who came before us. All right. So in this next part, we're leaving the realms, the upper realms. We're going back to earth. And we're going back in particular to the burning bush, because the way this is organized, we're going to go back to Moses and chapter 3 of the Torah of the book of Exodus, which is Moses being called for his mission. So let's take a look at the burning bush. Judith, take it back.
Moses declines the mission. When Moses turned aside to see the great sight, that the bush was not consumed, he heard a voice calling to him. draw not near. Draw not near. These words were to convey that the dignity to be conferred upon God intended for Moses personally, not for his descendants. And further, he was warned not to arrogate honors appointed for others, as the priesthood, which was to belong to Aaron and Aaron's descendants, or royalty, which is to appertain to David and the house of David.
Wow. So Moses is actually cautioned by, God in a way that it's not what you expect. It's not what you'd think, maybe, is the words that I would use, right? So after hearing that Moses gets to go to heaven and gets to see the inner workings of the universe, he's still told here, at least again, a different midrash, but still a midrash that exists, that you're not allowed to do anything, even with your amazing knowledge and abilities and teachings and everything else. You don't get to do everything. You're not a priest, and you're not royalty. Those are checks and balances that we've created. You don't get to do everything. And again, this is from this phrase in the burning bush, where God says, "Al tikrav," don't come closer. And he says, of course, the next is take off your shoes, right? But the rabbis derive from "do not come closer" means don't step over the boundary.
Step over your.
Yeah, which is really interesting, because it's not where you'd think they would go with that one phrase. It's two words in Hebrew. Don't encroach. Don't step. And then we still say it. Don't step over the line. The line that he says is not coming close to the burning bush. Take off your sandals. That whole business. It's don't go out of your zone. You've got a lane. Stay in your lane. So it's an interesting little midrash on two words. And now to the shoes.
Again, the voice spoke. Put off your shoes from off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. These words conveyed the desire of God that he cut asunder every bond uniting him with earthly concerns. He was even to give up his conjugal life. Hereupon the angel Michael spoke to God, "O Lord of the world, can it be your purpose to destroy mankind? Blessing can prevail only if male and female are united. And yet you bid Moses separate from his wife." God answered, saying, "Moses has begot children. He has done his duty toward the world. I desire him to unite himself now with the Shekhinah, that she may ascend upon earth for his sake."
Does anybody want to say
Zipporah?
anything about that?
What about Zipporah?
Yes.
I thought.
Yes.
Does anybody?
Yeah, he's done his
married
duty.
to Zipporah. He's got his kid.
Children, he's done his thing. To hell with her.
Yeah, you're done. He's done.
Right.
The answer, Michael actually speaks like, in his defense, going, "Are you kidding me? It's not good for a person not to be able to be with, a male, female, united, whatever. It's the way you made it, God, right? And now you're saying he can't be with her." He says, "Doesn't matter. He's had his children. Now it's time for him to be married to me."
Why this particular thing?
Oh, by the way, look at what it says. Don't unite. He says the Shekhinah. So what? I mean, let's look at that for a second. It's basically saying God's saying here, Moses isn't going to be with his wife anymore. All of his sexual energy is going to be devoted towards the Shekhinah, towards the feminine
Sounds like
aspect
the
of God.
foundation of monastic orders.
Yeah.
So look,
it's like
this is what we do get in Judaism, which is there is an ascetic tendency in some forms of Judaism that would say once you did your mitzvah of procreating, you no longer, if you were living a truly holy life, you cut yourself off from physical sexual enjoyment. And what's strange is, of course, is that here, and again, I can't speak to monastic orders and to, Christian orders, but here, I mean, I know that nuns, sisters are married to Christ, but this is the rabbis being told to essentially, if you want to follow Moses, unite with the feminine aspect of God. It says the Shekhinah, that she may be, so she can descend on earth. I mean, this is a
It's creepy.
somewhat sexual.
Right.
I mean, you're describing God, you're describing God's presence in a feminine form, and that is going to take Moses's energies and impulses,
Right.
absorb them, and that unification is going to be what Moses should be doing now.
Well, and I think you get, with nuns, you get the bride of Christ, and with Roman Catholic clergy or other clergy who are celibate, you attach yourself, as it were, to the feminine aspects of God.
Do they talk about that much, the feminine aspects? In the monastery,
Roman Catholic Church? I don't think so. But I know that Orthodox clergy, for example, when you graduate from seminary, if you intend to be a bishop, which seems a little presumptuous to me, you do not go off to look for a wife. But if you're going to be a parish priest, you go off and look for a wife as soon as you graduate.
Yeah, I know that certain clergy in the Orthodoxy, if you're going to the upper realms, you
Right.
are on that path, but which
seemed a little presumptuous always to me.
But again, maybe they knew something there about what people wanted to do with their lives sexually too. Well, I don't know. Listen, the point is that here it's clearly divine feminine. I haven't heard, and again, I don't know enough about it, but I don't know if monastic orders describe God as a feminine that they then marry them, or that they then.
I don't think so.
You do get it.
I'm not aware of it.
You do get it in
women.
You get it in nuns.
Judaism.
Yeah.
In Judaism, we get two forms of this. We get the Shekhinah as God, and then we get knowledge, as we talked about before, Sophia, but more, again, descriptive, even more descriptive, that it's the Torah. That the Torah that people, because the Torah also is a feminine form, and it's really all form. I mean, it's all knowledge is the Torah, right? So when somebody looks at that, they say, oh, well, they're married to the Torah. And we actually call somebody on Simchat Torah, we call them a Chasan Torah, the Chatan Torah, the person married to the Torah. So we have little vestiges of this. We obviously have Shabbos that's also compared to the bride as a woman, as a queen, as a bride.
It just occurred to me, though, that and it's gone. It occurred to me it would have changed all our lives. I can't remember what it was.
It'll come back.
Train of thought got derailed.
Something about feminine.
The Torah being feminine is created for men. It's not created for women. And isn't that, or could that be one of the reasons that ultra-Orthodox women are not to study the Torah?
Well,
it's for men.
It's definitely out there that because the sexual orientation of the Torah, or the sexual identity of the Torah, whatever you want to call it, it's how it's personified as a woman.
Right.
That yes, a man desires it and should want to, and to want to put his energies into that. And that's what he should be loving. That's what he should love in all forms of their energy, love, attention, that it goes to the Torah. So yes, it does become, and no woman can compete with, can compete with it.
Right.
So, this is real. I mean, this idea that the Torah or God is something that you attach yourself to. I mean, you hear there were stories of people who cut themselves off from all conjugal relations, and whether that was permitted or not, it seems like it was. I mean, it seems like most of the discussions about it are that once a man fulfills his
Procreation.
he can do what he wants. Again, this is relevant because this still happens. So there are a lot of men who really do want to study all the time, and who look at their home lives and their family lives as the obligation that they have to fulfill, and then the rest of the time they want to study. And as we know, a lot of the women work for the family so that the husband can do this, and they're okay with that role. There actually is a whole society culture based on this idea that essentially that the husband's real life, real love is the Torah, that the woman is second fiddle to that. And that's not like, that's accepted. There's not a problem with that. There's not, how do we deal with that? That's what we have to.
So then he marries so that he can study all the time.
That becomes the means to the end being studying
His
Torah as much
unification
as
with
possible.
God. Torah.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
So so there is this teaching that Moses did it, and if Moses did it, then again, we may not all reach that level, but we aspire to that level.
Wasn't he already ancient at that point?
Well, that's a good point too, because assumedly, he's about 60 or 70 at this point. But here's the point, and this is one of the things that the rabbis know, and we know too, because we've read the end of the story. The Torah tells us that the very last line of Moses, not the very last line, almost the very last line of the Torah, but about 20 verses before the end of Deuteronomy, that Moses was full of vigor. And the understanding is that his vital juices were still flowing when he was 120. So the rabbis knew that. They know that line, and their point is that Moses lived a celibate life for 40 years. Now, this is not in the Torah, but Sipporah is noticeably absent. He doesn't seem to be interested at all in her after he starts his mission. And the rabbis interpret this as again, he did his business, he had his kids, and now he has to do his job, which is to teach and to lead. So it's a pretty wild idea. It's again, never that you don't have kids, but that is your mission. Once you finish that, you can get back to the big mission, which is studying Torah, which is your life. So that's a teaching that is very, very well known, that Moses was celibate for the last 40 years of his life. I didn't say it's in the Torah, but it is a accepted teaching. Because remember, by the way, Sipporah isn't even with him until Yitro brings him in Exodus chapter 19 at Mount Sinai. She doesn't seem to be around, and the rabbis know that too. So, and he doesn't have any more kids after this either, obviously. All right.
God spoke further, addressing Moses. You see only what is to happen in the near future, that Israel is to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. But I behold what comes after, how the people will worship the steer, the figure of which they will see upon my chariot, even while my revelation will be made on Sinai. Thus they will excite my wrath. Nevertheless, though I know all the perverseness of their hearts, wherein they will rebel against me in the desert, I will redeem them now. For I record For I accord unto man the treatment he merits for his present actions, not what he will deserve in the future. I promised their father Jacob, I will go down with you into Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again. And now I will betake myself there to bring Israel up in accordance with my words to Jacob, and bear them to the land I swore to their fathers, and that their seed should inherit it. So long as the time of affliction that I had appointed upon his seed in my revelation to Abraham was not past, I hearkened not to the supplication and the groaning of his children. But now the end has come. Therefore, go before Pharaoh, that he dismiss my people. If you do not bring about the redemption, none other will, for there is none other that can do it. In you does Israel hope, and upon you does Israel wait. The matter lies in your hands alone. Keep going.
Well, let's talk about that just for a second. So that's not in the chapter 3. What God says is, Ra'iti et ani ami. I have seen the plight of my people. I've seen the suffering of my people. I've heard their cries. The question, of course, that the rabbis are asking here is, what took you so long? What, you just decided today to do this? Why now? And so that's the question that the rabbis are essentially putting out there and providing an answer to, which is, I promised Jacob that I would take them out. But I know they're going to screw up. Why do I know they're going to screw up? Because I can see the future and I know what they do. And I know that even now, even as I go down there to and send you down there to rescue them, they're going to screw up. And they're going to screw up like soon. And we don't have to go too far, because in Exodus, they're going to build a golden calf. So the rabbis basically say, one of the reasons why God is hesitant to redeem us is because God knows we're going to screw up, like almost immediately. It's only going to take a few weeks for us to be on our own, and we're going to screw up. So there's that. It's not just that I told them that they're going to be down in Egypt. I told your ancestors they're going to be there. I told Abraham and Jacob they were going to be there. But he knows that, and we know that, and everybody who's read the Torah before knows what's going to happen. But he says, I'm going to redeem them anyways, even though they're going to screw up, because I don't punish people for what they're going to do, which is a wonderful lesson from the Torah, again, from the Midrash. So if you want to know what do Jews believe about punishment, whether you can go back and kill baby Hitler, the answer just there is you can't. Because you can't, God doesn't punish people for what they're going to do. So the rabbis gave the answer for why God was hesitant. But God also says, I can't not do it because I know they're going to screw up. So I got to do it. And I got to forget that they're going to break my law immediately. As I'm telling them not to worship idols, they're going to make an idol right there at that same place I told them not to, that I told them directly not to make an idol. They're going to do it right there. So he said, I can't, I got to do what I have to do, which is redeem the people. I have to do my job. My job is to redeem these people because I promised them, and they're my people, and I'm going to do it. And I know I'm not going to wind up good, but we're going to do it. Now, here's the weird thing about the golden calf that they just threw out there, which I also want to point out is in the Midrash. You just read it. Judith, did you catch what they said about the golden calf?
Mm-mm.
So, there's this question: where do the Jews get the golden calf from? Like, what's that about? And there's
Oh,
the theory
gotcha.
that the Egyptians worship the golden calf.
Chariots.
They got it from here. They got it from. The Midrash just told us they saw it on my chariot. They saw the
Right.
calf carrying me because one of the angels or one of the divine Merkavah chariot things is a bull, is a cow type thing, right? It's a cow, it's a lion, it's a human, it's got the eagle wings, it's that thing. Oh man, that's where they got it. They got the golden calf from my own stuff. So that's another little thing that the rabbis just threw out there, which is, where did we get the golden calf from? From God, accidentally. God, we saw part of God and we were like, oh, God's a calf, or God at least rides on a calf. That's how we made the golden calf. So they just threw that out there too. A little bit of golden calf. That's how you get it, from God's throne. All right. Moses, as you've already read, and from the title of this midrash and from the burning bush, I don't want to go. God just told you, I can't do this without you. Nobody else can do this. That's a lot of pressure, by the way. Moses, nobody else in the whole world can do what I'm telling you to do right now. Redeem my people. It's all in your hands.
But you have to give up your wife.
I don't know if that's, by the way, that doesn't seem to be Moses' issue. I just want to point out, that doesn't seem to be his issue. God just put a whole lot of pressure on him. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to go, is this conversation, which isn't in the Torah, which isn't, I can send somebody else. It's actually, of course,
It's you.
I can't send anybody else. You're it. So Moses,
however, refused to take the mission upon himself. He said to God, your promise to Jacob was, I will surely bring you up again out of Egypt. You did undertake it to do it yourself, and now it is your purpose to send me there. And how, indeed, were it possible for me to accomplish this great matter, to bring the children of Israel up out of Egypt? How could I provide them with food and drink? Many are the women in childbirth among them. Many are the pregnant women and the little children. From where shall I procure dainties for those who have borne babes? Where sweetmeats for the pregnant, and where tidbits for the little ones? And how may I venture to go among the Egyptian brigands and murderers? For you are bidding me to go to my enemies, to those who lie in wait to take my life. Why should I risk the safety of my person, seeing that I know not whether Israel possesses merits making them worthy of redemption? I have reckoned up the years with care, and I have found that but 210 have elapsed since the covenant of the pieces made with Abraham. And at that time, you did ordain 400 years of oppression for his seed.
So this is not in the Torah, but we do know that Moses says, I don't want to do this, right? We have that conversation. It's in the Torah, it's very clear. That should be enough. You'd think that would be enough for you, because it's a pretty detailed conversation. It's a great debate back and forth between Moses and God. And it's Moses saying, I can't speak very well. I'm not, this is not what I need to do. Here is actually the stuff that you really wanted Moses to say. Like, so this midrash is what you thought Moses would say at the burning bush. We know he does, assuming again, he doesn't want to do it. This is where the midrash comes in and fills that blank. Folks, this is wonderful because this is like, you're Moses. What are your objections? And Moses is like, how do I feed these people? How do I take care of little kids? There's little kids here. How do I take care of the little kids? I can't take care of little kids. Can't take care of my own kids. You want me to take care of all these other kids? How do I take care of this? You're putting them, you're literally putting their lives in risk, giving them to me. Which, by the way, you can imagine some dad telling his wife this with the newborn infants. She's going out doing some errands. You can't leave this kid with me. I'll kill it. I don't know what to do. I can't feed it. Are you serious? You're going to leave this kid with me? Now, this is Moses being that dad who doesn't want to look after his kids. He wants to watch football. No, it's worse than that because, of course, he's going to have to do it for a long time. And he offers some really compelling challenges, which is, God, how do I know these people? Maybe they don't even deserve it. And he, of course, knows they don't deserve it because Moses sees the future and Moses knows these things. And he's also thrown out to God, they probably don't deserve it. Why are you, well, don't send me. They don't deserve it. I'm pretty comfortable here. And these people want to kill me, God. Why would you send me back to the people who want to kill me? And he throws out one other thing, which is kind of a funny one, because again, it's this one that, like, when you do the math, you're like, well, wait a second. You told Abraham that your descendants were going to be slaves for 400 years, a long time. And it seems like in some places it is hundreds of years. But there are other times when if you do the math, it's not 400 years. It can't be 400 years. And so God seems to be redeeming us earlier than we should be, which means that our situation was so bad that God said, you know what? Enough. I can't let these people sit here anymore. I know what I said, but they're coming out now. 210 years. And so Moses challenges God now, saying, I did the math. They're not supposed to come out yet. Leave them there a little longer. Leave me alone. Leave them there and get somebody else. Come back in a few generations. So it's a really interesting midrash because it's Moses arguing with the other things that we know about Moses, that we know about the people, that we know about human nature, which is not just that Moses was like looking for excuses. Moses says, God, your own plan doesn't include me, doesn't include now. Wait, don't do this. Don't do this. And that's these are the challenges that are not in the Torah, but are in that you may have thought of. You may have actually run these through your head. If I was Moses and God told me, you're going back, I'm sending you on a mission that's going to change your life. Your life as you knew it is over. Now your life is mine. It's going to be tough. And you're literally walking into hell. You're walking in and you're going to have to deal with people who said they're going to kill you. So this is wild.
But God overturned all his objections. He spoke to Moses saying, I will be with you. Whatever you desire, I will do, so that the redemption will in very truth be realized through me in accordance with my promise to Jacob. The little ones that Israel will carry up out of Egypt, I will provide with food for 30 days. This will prove to you in what manner I will supply the needs of all. And as I will be at your side, you have no need to fear any man. Respecting your doubt, whether Israel deserves to be redeemed, this is my answer. They will be permitted to go forth from Egypt on account of the merits they will acquire at this mountain, whereon they will receive the Torah through you. And your reckoning at the end is not correct, for the 400 years of bondage began with the birth of Isaac, not with the going down of Jacob into Egypt. Therefore, the appointed end has come.
Wow. So 400 years didn't start when they actually went into bondage. It started with the birth of Isaac. I counted from when I said I was going to do it, not 400 years of bondage, but 400 years from now, their bondage will end. Well, how do we get to that? Well, Isaac lives 180 years. If the people went into slavery, if that happened about 10 years after Isaac died, then you get pretty close to 400 years. 210 plus 180 plus 10, you got 400 years. So that's how you got the 400 years. It wasn't 400 years of total bondage, 400 years from when God said there'll be bondage. The bondage will end. So, sorry, Moses, you're here, time's up, and the people are ready to go. People are coming out. So there's an answer for the reconciliation of the 400 years that it actually starts with when Isaac was born.
Persuaded now of God's unalterable resolve to use him as his instrument in the redemption of Israel from Egypt, Moses entreated God to impart to him the knowledge of his great name, that he be not confounded if the children of Israel ask for it. God answered, saying, You desire to know my name? My name is according to my acts. When I judge my creatures, I am called Elohim, judge. When I rise up to do battle against the sinners, I am Lord Sivaot, the Lord of hosts. When I wait with long-suffering patience for the improvement of the sinner, my name is El Shaddai. When I have mercy upon the world, I am Adonai. But to the children of Israel, you shall say that I am he that was, that is, and that ever will be. And I am he that is with them in their bondage now, and he that shall be with them in the bondage of the time to come.
Wow. So this is the famous scene where Moses asks God, who shall I say, right? What do I call you? And, you know, Moses actually puts to God in a different way, which is when the Israelites say, who sent you? God says, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I will be what I will be. Or I am what I am. So that's the name that God says to him here. Now, what we also have here is a midrash on what do the different names of God mean. And we see the words. Now look, as we talked about in our Wednesday night class last week when we read Vayeshev, chapter 37, the names oftentimes, it's which author is writing which section, who's the Elohist and who's the J author. No, of course the rabbis say these are all names for God. And here's the interesting thing. Each of these names, according to the rabbis, show a different aspect of God, of the same entity. It's God. There's no more gods. But that these names refer to different aspects of God. And it's interesting because it does seem to kind of carry like a theme that we have in Judaism, which is that Elohim seems to be the transcendent God. The God who is the prime mover, if you will. And then we have Adonai Tzvaot, which is the God of hosts, the God that goes into battle. But then there's also God El Shaddai, God of patience. And then we have Adonai, which is mercy, which is obviously it is the God who is a loving God. And that's the God that we see mentioned in comforting people. And it's the imminent God. It's the God that's right around the corner from us. It's the God that's walking in the Garden of Eden. That's the J name, the Adonai name, the unpronounceable name. But then he says there's another name here, which is the name that I'm redeeming him with, which is I will be what I will be. Judge me for what I'm going to do now. Right? And that anytime you're in a crisis, that's Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. That's the God that is with you when you're in bondage now and when you will be in bondage later. Anytime you're in those straits, God will be what God will be. How will God manifest? That is the name that, again, usually isn't translated, because it could be I am what I am, I will be what I will be, I am what I will be what I am. There's no way of translating it for sure, because the words in Hebrew they're time-based. They're not really a noun. They're words of being. God is the being. And because of the being, it's also will be what God will be. So it's a really interesting midrash on the names of God. How do we perceive God? What names do we call God by? Those are all words that are used frequently in the Bible. I mean, all of them are used frequently. There's other names for God in the Bible that appear once or twice, but these are words that are frequent in Psalms, in later on in prayer, in Tefillah. And of course, we combine them, folks, because when we say Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, blessed are you Adonai, Elohim, right? Elohim Shalanu, our God. So we always say, blessed are you, Lord, our God, right? But those two words are the Adonai and the Elohim words together. The transcendent God and also the God who's something that we talk to. So those words are in every prayer. We just don't think about them very much because we say them in Hebrew and we don't think about the fact that we draw those names together every time we pray. Every time we say a bracha, every time we say a blessing. All right. Here we go.
And in reply to the latter words of God, Moses said, "Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof." And God assented thereto. He admitted that it was not proper to force the knowledge of future suffering upon Israel in a present that was itself full of evil and sorrow. And the Lord said to Moses, "My words about the future were meant for you alone, not also for them. Tell the children of Israel besides that at my behest an angel can stretch his hand from heaven and touch the earth with it, and 3 angels can find room under one tree. And my majesty can fill the whole world, for when it was my will, it appeared to Job in his hair. And again, when I willed otherwise, it appeared in a thorn bush."
So how does God appear to us? We have God talking to us, and we also have, it's time to also look at God as a, how do you look at God when you're talking to God in a bush? Because remember, God is Moses is not only thinking about how God's appearing to him, but how God's going to appear to them. And I can appear in strange places. So yeah, I'm talking to you out of a burning bush, out of a thorn bush. I can appear to somebody in their hair. I came to Job in his hair, which doesn't really seem to be in the book of Job, but it's a reading, I guess, that you will, and that God is in Job, with Job, causing Job to have weird feelings and that kind of stuff. But here we go. Finish with these parts right here.
The most important communication from God to Moses concerning the divine names were the words to follow. In mercy, I created the world. In mercy, I guided. And with mercies, I will return to Jerusalem. But to the children of Israel, you shall say that my mercy upon them is for the sake of the merits of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yep. And again, we have that idea throughout the Bible and throughout the Midrash, which is that we do invoke Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? These are the reasons that we, to some extent, deserve this kind of treatment. Not because of our merits, but because of theirs.
When Moses heard these words, he spoke to God, saying, "Are there men that transgress after death?" And when God assured him that it was not possible for the dead to sin, Moses asked again, "Why then is it that you did reveal yourself to me at the first as the God of my father, and now you pass over him? Whereupon God said, "In the beginning, it was my purpose to address you with flattering words, and now you hear the whole and exact truth. I am only the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob."
Originally, remember at the beginning of Exodus, he says, "I'm the God of your father." But now this other time that God talks, he says, "I'm God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." What happened to my dad?
I was being nice.
He says, "Well, I was just kind of getting your attention. I'm getting serious now. I am the God who spoke to those people. You heard of me. I'm not just the God, I talked big, important times. And you're now part of that group." Yeah, I'm not playing around anymore.
Moses prayed to God, entreating him to reveal his great and holy name unto him, so that he might call upon him with it and secure the fulfillment of all his wishes. The Lord granted the prayer of Moses, and when the celestials knew that he had revealed the secret of the ineffable name, they cried out, "Blessed are you, O Lord, gracious giver of knowledge." God is always regardful of the honor of the elders of a people, and he bade Moses assemble those of Israel and announce the approaching redemption to them. And as God knew beforehand how Pharaoh's obduracy would display itself, he made it known to Moses at once, lest he reproach God later with the Egyptian king's forwardness.
Yeah. So
frowardness.
Right. Yeah. We have a little little foretaste of what's going to happen, which is that, yeah, Moses isn't going to have to do this by himself. The leaders of the community are going to help him. Of course, Aaron's going to help him. We're going to get to that. Actually, I think we're probably going to take a pause here for today. Yeah, because before we get into Moses arguing and what happens to him, which is an interesting midrash in itself, Moses is told at the burning bush, Pharaoh is not going to listen to you. And so, I guess the rabbis kind of asked the question, God, why did God tell us, if you're asking somebody to do something, don't tell them it's going to be hard to begin with, right? Kind of let them learn that on their own. And the Midrash is actually teaching us something really important. If you're asking somebody to do something important and tough, make sure you tell them what's going to happen. Don't tell them it's all going to be okay, right? Don't tell them it's going to be easy when you know it's not going to be easy. Don't tell them it's going to be quick and safe and whatever if you're asking them to do something dangerous. So the Midrash is teaching us something actually here, which is maybe counterintuitive, but is really important and is a good lesson, which is don't lie to people or don't hold back information from them, because it'll be worse. Because if Moses had walked into Egypt and thought everything was going to be okay, then he might have turned away and said, "You know what, I'm done. I'm not doing this." But instead, Moses gives him the tough part. I mean, God gives Moses the tough part. He tells him it's going to be rough. And that way Moses can't turn around to tell God, you never told me this. Didn't you know this was going to be hard? So God tells him right away, it's going to be hard. Now, of course, next week, we're going to read that whole section of the Midrash on that section of Moses fighting and saying, no, I really don't want to do it. Because Moses is really, really you know, maybe we'll look at it next week. Moses was really, really clear that he doesn't want to do it. Send somebody else, he says. He doesn't want to do it. And he has a good reason. Because God told him it's going to be hard. So just remember something. This isn't this when we read things like this in the Midrash, it actually helps us by putting not only the words into our mouths of what we might have said, what we'd want to say in the scene, but it also helps us kind of put words into our mouth that we should say on a daily basis when it comes to our daily lives. And you know, I'm not going to say anything on behalf of Reverend Lynn, but one of the things that, you know, one of my jobs as rabbi is to try to get new people to step up and take on leadership in the congregation. And some people who are on this line have done that before. It's not always easy. It's oftentimes not very rewarding and not very. It's tough, and it's not. There's not a lot of accolade and not a lot of comfort in sometimes the work that people do as volunteers. And it's hard because, you know, on one hand, you want to encourage people to take on these jobs, these missions, but you have to be, you know, you don't want to scare them away. And a lot of times you don't know how hard it's going to be either. You know, you don't know what kind of jobs people are going to do. But I remember getting Judith all wrapped up into the preschool, and I mean, we had our reasons for doing it. We had kids that we wanted to go to our preschool and everything else, but that was an enormous job. And in all fairness, I didn't know how hard it was going to be, but
Yeah.
it was.
It's really Mary Fuchsman's fault. You don't have to take the blame for that.
I don't know. I feel like that was partly mine, but I also dragged Judith was one of the original board members of Einstein too. So, you know, I've dragged Judith along on these missions. I think it's fitting that she is the reader of this text today. So thank you, Judith, for doing that. But yeah, I mean, I've been guilty of not giving people, well, again, usually it's because I didn't know how difficult it was going to be, but yeah, it is. I have to tell you, we do it with our families. We do it with people, you know, when we want to do something, we sometimes don't tell them the whole story, but it's probably better if we do. If we know it, it's probably better for us to spill the beans and let them know. But again, a lot of times we don't, in all fairness. I mean, this is also assuming that God knew exactly what was going to happen in Egypt, and he's God. It's God, so you have to assume that. But again, some of us don't, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we know we're asking people to do things that are dangerous, and we don't give them the full information because we're so badly want them to do it that we don't tell them the whole. Don't give them the whole picture. So it's a good lesson for being truthful and being upfront and hoping that people will rise to the occasion. Moses, as we're going to see next week, has to be given
Nudged.
a lot of nudging. I want to thank Reverend Lynn too for the beautiful gift. Thank you for this great collection of midrash on focusing on women, which it's the Womanist Midrash by Wilda Gaffney, and I haven't read through the whole thing, but I've read through some of it already. I love books about women in the Midrash, and Wilda Gaffney is the writer, and she's a professor of Bible in is it Texas or can't remember where.
Yeah. Where? Let's see.
Jewish or not Jewish?
No, not Jewish, but is a very, very knowledgeable.
Yeah, Fort Worth. Yeah,
Fort
she's
Worth.
in Fort Worth.
Fort Worth. I've never met her. I've never studied with her, but she's professor of Hebrew Bible at Bright Divinity School.
Right.
And she wrote this Womanist Midrash I would love to maybe get her on and have her talk. And she's taught before at, I don't know, she was a member, seems to be pretty ecumenical. She's taught courses at Recon, we call Recon, Reconstructions Rabbinical Seminary in, where is it, Judith?
Melrose Park.
Well,
Or is it Jenkintown now? What's
it says
that?
it says it's in the Wyncote, but
It's not.
One of the things that I particularly like, All Saints is using her womanist liturgy or lectionary this year. Often we read a lot of scripture in the Episcopal Church. We always begin with something from the Hebrew scriptures, but it's often used to sort of bolster what's going to happen in the Gospels or the epistles sometimes. And her take, which is I think the take of the church, the broader church, by that I mean the church, the Episcopal Church, is that the Hebrew scriptures ought to stand on their own and not be used to hold up the Christian scriptures. So I really like that approach, which we've started doing at All Saints, and they're really good.
I'll tell you one thing. She's got some awesome robes. She knows how to wear robes. I'm looking at some of the pictures of her vestments, and she's got some good. I couldn't pull any of those off, but I would love to have a little bit of that style in my clothing instead of wearing.
Well, go for it. Go for it.
The sweater
I went to a synagogue where they wore top hats.
Yeah, not doing that. I look ridiculous. There's a picture of me in the house, by the way, in a top hat somewhere.
Well, yeah, we should buy you a top hat, Rabbi, and you can come to synagogue.
In England, in Sephardic synagogues, they wear top hats, what you're just talking about.
Yeah.
But in England, they do it at Ashkenazi synagogues. Everybody, happy Hanukkah. I'm parched, but I'm parched because I was in hell today. I started off in hell, and then I got to heaven. And in the meantime, again, everybody stay safe. It's really, really serious out there. I've been getting texts throughout the day from people who are having family members, get diagnosed. Somebody yesterday, our own Mark Kaplan told me one of his good friends died after 2 weeks of having. He was only in his mid-50s, and he just passed away yesterday. So please, again, people know I've sometimes gone out. I traveled in August. I went, with the family to Utah. I have not left the house in the last 3 days. Honestly, I haven't even gone to the grocery store. So please, again, be safe and careful right now. I'm not one of the overly worried people, but is definitely one in the midst of this right now. So
yeah,
stay safe.
Take care, everybody.
Happy Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. Thanks for being here.